Hi, my name is Justin and I'm with Ascend Finance. Today, we're going to cover Chapter 13 bankruptcy in Florida. The question I want to start with is, what percentage of Chapter 13 bankruptcies do you think actually end successfully, meaning you get out of the debt? Only 38.8%. Why? That's often because it's related to cost and many other variables. And so here's what we're going to cover in today's video. Number one, a quick Chapter 13 bankruptcy introduction. Number two, your monthly Chapter 13 plan payment. 3, your Chapter 13 bankruptcy costs in Florida. 4, the Chapter 13 bankruptcy process in Florida. 5, the pros and cons attached to a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. And 6, and finally, the Chapter 13 bankruptcy alternatives. Before we begin and I go any further, please understand Chapter 13 bankruptcy in Florida can be really complex. So feel free to ask any questions or leave a comment below, and I'll do my best and we'll do our best together to get back to you as soon as possible. Also, please like the video if you enjoyed it. It's always really encouraging to me. Now, let's cover a quick introduction. So, number one, what is a Chapter 13 bankruptcy? So, a Chapter 13 bankruptcy is known as a wage earner's plan. That's because it allows individuals with a regular income to pay back some or all of their debts. The Chapter 13 bankruptcy plan is a monthly payment for often 3 or 5 years. People like Chapter 13 bankruptcy because it can stop wage garnishment, foreclosure, and provide protection from creditors. One of the most important things to understand is the affordability of a Chapter 13. So basically, how much do you have to pay each month and how many years of a plan? The reason that your Chapter 13 plan payment is so important is that it actually may be more expensive than your current debt obligations. With all that being said, it also could be less expensive, so it really depends. We get this question so often, we actually built a Chapter 13 bankruptcy calculator based on the actual bankruptcy forms. You can estimate your Chapter 13 plan payment using your zip code in the Florida Chapter 13 calculator in the description below. I'll add it there. Let's now discuss your Chapter 13 plan payment, how it works in Florida, the various costs and fees attached, the bankruptcy process in Florida, the pros and cons, and the alternatives. So let's talk about your Chapter 13 plan payment in Florida. There are various factors of what goes into it, so let's go through a few. Number one, your monthly disposable income. So the amount of income you have each month after subtracting allowable payroll deductions and allowable living expenses from your gross monthly income is what's calculated to be your disposable income. You can check on the government's means testing website though, and you can see all the fine local standards for Florida for the housing, utility, and transportations. Assets. So in some cases, the value of your assets could actually increase the amount of your Chapter 13 plan if your assets have a large amount of non-exempt equity. For example, if you own a home with a great deal of equity above the Florida bankruptcy exemptions, your Chapter 13 plan payment could be much higher. Debts. Some debts must be paid completely in full through a Chapter 13 plan. Those are generally going to be the priority unsecured debts like taxes, alimony, child support, administrative costs, while other creditors may only receive partial credits. Those are going to be unsecured debts like medical bills, personal loans, credit card debt. Chapter 13 plans typically include back mortgage payments and car loan payments as well. Also, recent financial transactions. So those are sometimes can impact your actual Chapter 13 plan. So it's important to consider. Duration. That's also an important thing to consider when deciding whether to file bankruptcy or Chapter 13 specifically or not. As the big question is going to be are you eligible for a 3 or 5 year plan? Your average monthly income compared to a Florida median income guideline is used to help determine whether you qualify for a 3 or 5 year plan for a Chapter 13 bankruptcy case in Florida. I'll add below, but also here, the median income guidelines for Florida for cases filed after May 15th, 2021. You can always check the government's means testing website for up-to-date data as it changes every 6 months. Now, the fees to consider in a Florida bankruptcy is mostly going to be the attorney fees, trustee fees, filing fees, bankruptcy courses, and miscellaneous costs. So let's go through the Chapter 13 bankruptcy fees in Florida. The Chapter 13 calculator also accounts for those fees, so you can use that to calculate it. But let's cover these fees one by one. Now, number one, attorney fees. The Chapter 13 bankruptcy attorney fee in Florida is estimated to be around $3,500 to $4,000. The fee can depend on the district, as attorney fees may be different from Miami to Orlando, so it really depends on the district. Now, another cost is the Chapter 13 trustee fees. A Chapter 13 bankruptcy is often a 3-year or 5-year plan, so there are going to be a lot of administrative costs and tasks attached, and so it's important to consider that as well. Generally, you can see a breakdown here of Florida Chapter 13 bankruptcy trustee fees to be around 5.3% all the way up to 10%. Just as a reference, as this can sometimes result in thousands of dollars paid to the trustee fees. Filing fee. The bankruptcy filing fee for a Chapter 13 case is generally around $313. This fee is going to be paid directly to the bankruptcy court. It's a national fee, not specific to Florida. Just something to know. Now, there are also miscellaneous fees such as bankruptcy courses and getting to court as well. So those are good to consider as well. So let's now cover the Chapter 13 bankruptcy process. The process is important to understanding when filing bankruptcy. So here are some questions to consider in the process to file. First, understand the different types of bankruptcies. So most folks will file a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, but it's important to know the differences. Chapter 7 is often cheaper and provides faster debt relief, but each has its own pros and cons. Second, understand which debts will be eliminated. Many unsecured debts are eliminated in a Chapter 13, but it's good to understand which ones are and which are not. Third, estimate your Chapter 13 bankruptcy plan payment. It's good to get an idea of what your 13 could look like for you specifically. 4, understand alternatives to filing Chapter 13 bankruptcy. The main alternatives to Chapter 13 bankruptcy are Chapter 7, debt settlement, debt management, and debt payoff planning. 5, determine whether to hire a Chapter 13 bankruptcy attorney to file bankruptcy. 6, take a credit counseling course. 7, file bankruptcy petition and other forms. 8, a Chapter 13 bankruptcy trustee is assigned to your bankruptcy filing. 9, attend the Chapter 13 bankruptcy court meetings. 10, take a second mandatory debt education course. 11, continue to make your Chapter 13 monthly plan payments. And 12, you'll receive your bankruptcy discharge. As you can see, there's a whole slew of steps in the process, but some of the processes are just understanding whether you'd like to file bankruptcy or not. The 5th, let's go over the Chapter 13 bankruptcy pros and cons. We'll first cover the pros, excuse me. First pro is it can prevent foreclosure so that you can keep your home by catching up with the past due mortgage payments over 3 to 5 years. Another pro, it can stop wage garnishments, seizures, levies, or any debt collection lawsuits. Pro, it can stop creditor harassment. Another pro, it can stop wage garnishments, I was saying before. You may also get a discharge on a second mortgage through a Chapter 13. Another pro, you may be able to pay less than what you owe to satisfy the secured lien on your vehicle. Another pro, catch up on past due child support and alimony. Another pro could be getting rid of unsecured debts for pennies on the dollar. You may be able to resolve tax debts and IRS problems. And finally, another pro would be that you can protect property from being sold to pay the debts. Now, let's cover the downsides. One con is the cost of the Chapter 13 bankruptcy can sometimes be expensive. And it's often 3 or 5 years. It can have a negative impact on your credit score, and it can reflect negatively on your credit report as well. 2 other cons are, first, low payment flexibility. It may have a difficulty variability of what your payment would look like. And finally, your monthly plan payment can increase if your income increases. Now we have an idea of the pros and cons. I want to jump into Chapter 13 bankruptcy alternatives. So now let's cover the common Chapter 13 bankruptcy alternatives in this video here. So first, let's cover Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So Chapter 7 bankruptcy is often the least expensive option and the fastest form of debt relief. You can get rid of debt relief in as little as 120 days, and there's no Chapter 13 trustee, and the attorney fees are also a lot less expensive because the cases are less complex. Many people file Chapter 7 when they qualify and are not at risk of losing any belongings in the bankruptcy. Second, let's cover debt settlement. So debt settlement is where a company or you negotiate and settle debt with your creditors. The goal is to reduce the payment burden of all your debt by around 50%, which will help lower your monthly payment, thus providing debt relief. There are definitely pros and cons of debt settlement, so definitely do your research. Third, let's cover debt management. Debt management is often where a nonprofit credit counseling agency negotiates the interest rate on your current debt. They may negotiate a high interest credit card on a 25% interest rate down to 9%. The goal is to reduce your monthly payment. You may also be on a 3 or 5 year payment plan. I hope this video has been helpful in your understanding of filing a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. You can visit the Chapter 13 bankruptcy calculator below to estimate your planned payment. Did you learn anything, something new from this video? Please click the subscribe button, as we're going to put more and more videos out to hopefully help you make the most informed decision. Now, I'd like to turn it over to you. What are some questions you have about filing Chapter 13 bankruptcy? Please comment below, and I'll do my best to respond as quickly as possible. Thanks for watching.